All right, it being officially 6 o'clock, I call this meeting of the Charter Review Commission to order. Before we get started, wanted to follow up. We have a new member on the board. Wanted her a chance to introduce herself. So, Amanda, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Nice to meet you all. Amanda Hartigan. Moved here 2.5 years ago or so. Boston native. This is my first time serving on a public committee, but I've been on, it feels like, a million nonprofit committees. Currently on a couple. I work full-time at the Boston Foundation, which is philanthropy, community foundation. So kind of serve as a governance person for a lot of folks, thousands of nonprofits in the past, and happy to be here. I'm also Rick's neighbor, so we share a fence, like a third of a fence, and it's great. So it's nice to meet you guys.
Welcome.
Thanks.
So one of the reasons I'm very excited to have Amanda on the committee is, one, as you heard, she has just oodles of experience with nonprofits and governance. Knowing kind of what works, some best practices on how to arrange themselves and manage themselves, and I thought it'd be just a great background to have on the board. The second reason is that because she's a new resident to the town, I feel like she'd be a good person to sound things out on, so that if we're talking about something and she just has no clue about why we're doing it, why it makes sense, what the background is, I think is a great way for us to say, hold on a second, let's figure out if we're really making this as simple as it should be, or we get to revisit. So, welcome, Amanda. So, my understanding is that we have some minutes we need to approve. Pete, did you want to pass those around? Or do you only have the one copy?
I have the one copy of the 415. I thought.
Okay.
I can go around and make copies if we need.
Yeah, why don't we go do that then?
Thank you.
Maybe they can edit this part out and put it back.
I haven't read that.
Every now and then I think it would just be easier just to print everything out and just basically have a binder, have everybody have a binder with all the notes in it. But then it's like, are you getting away from that? So, but just.
Do you have like a Google Drive or anything that you save everything in?
Create one or something. Just drop it into it.
Yeah. An archive? Is that what the previous secretary had done?
No, we just kind of emailed each other, so.
Yeah, it might be easier always with all the attachments that you sent, because it's hard to always look through emails.
If someone doesn't have Gmail, can they still access
Yeah.
it? Okay, so I'll do that. Create a Gmail account.
Speaking of printing things out, Rick, I think I sent you updates about right after the last minute meeting. I didn't print any of them out. I don't even have hard copies of them. So there's probably no way to print them.
Yeah, unfortunately, my computer doesn't connect to their network.
I can't connect to any of them. Yeah, to the network, yeah.
But we can still discuss and go over it.
Yeah.
Your original, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. right, so we'll take a quick second just to read through these, see what we remember from that time. Any notes?
In the notes, we talked about a conservation, and it says conversation.
Yep.
Which date? On the
Uh,
14th.
Okay.
So I'm sure that was just a autocorrect swap out. Because then in the following, it says it properly.
All right, any other notes on this? All right, I will entertain a motion to approve with that one correction.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? All right.
I'm abstaining because I wasn't there.
Says you were absent, you're right.
Anyone keeping minutes for this meeting?
I'm taking notes.
All right. All right, in the packet I handed out, I believe, is also the minutes from our last meeting in July.
Sorry, I didn't do it yet.
Any notes?
Move to approve the minutes of session 20.
Any second?
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Vote is unanimous. All right, with that out of the way. A couple things to pass around in terms of notes that we have received since our last meeting. On the top of the pile should be a note from Town Manager Scott Lambiase. He has made a suggestion, and this is a good technical suggestion. Technically, when there's a vacancy in an office, the current language says if there is a vacancy, the remaining members shall forthwith give notice of any existence of any such vacancy to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen shall then provide notice of such vacancy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Scott's point is that technically, and he has seen this apparently in another town, not here, if the board does not give forthwith notice to the Board of Selectmen, nothing happens. Or you have to wait for the next meeting of the board for the board to give said notice. So now you're talking 4 to 6 weeks before any action can be taken to fill the vacancy. So his comment is basically, I think it would just allow the chairperson to say, or the vice chairperson, just to say, hey, there's a vacancy. This is something that we're allowed to do. It's just to give notification and start this process. So this will be added. We don't have to have a discussion or vote on this tonight. We'll add it to the list of things that we're monitoring. We can come back to the general appointment process in a little bit because I have thoughts. But any quick notes on this Second, you also have correspondence from Selectman Alex Hagerty. As you'll remember, we sent a note to the Board of Selectmen following up on some questions that we had. This is the only feedback we've received since, is from Selectman Hagerty. And as you can see, there was some that he basically doesn't have any involvement with, he feels, and there are others that he feels kind of strongly about. We'll just walk through these very quickly. He believes the police chief should not be an indefinite appointment. Largely that it should be about 5 years. I know we've definitely had conversations about that. So we're definitely going to have some conversations about the whole alternate and associate positions, how we want to structure that. Currently, for instance, the zoning board has 3 full-time members and 2 alternates, and then depending on who's there, and who can make meetings, the alternate might slide in, kind of like a jury. The problem is that when you have 3 people voting, sometimes you need 3 votes to approve a project. So one person can kind of veto the whole thing. But if you have a 5-member board, then you can still have somebody veto, say no, and the project is still approved.
What is the rationale for alternates and all that kind of stuff?
So with the zoning board, it's that you need to have someone there for all the hearings for a project. So the idea is that everybody shows up, and then if someone has to miss a meeting, the alternate can slide in.
No, I understand that, but why shouldn't they be full members?
I haven't seen any good rationale.
So,
To make them a full member? Because then it throws off.
Maybe why not just make it 5 full-time?
Yeah, then you would just increase the board size.
right, and then you would have, if you needed 3 people, whatever it is, I don't know, I just never understood that or associate member.
I mean, the purpose could be so that you have to make it can be easier to vote something down. I mean, that could be the intent of it.
I just never understood any of that.
So with the Conservation Commission, the argument that I've heard is that because the learning curve is so great with conservation, and you're not in conservation, right?
I am.
You are in conservation.
Yes.
You're not in committees.
No, this is the only 2 I'm on.
That's your finance. Who's just
No. No.
Okay.
Wait, be clear, are you on finance?
I don't think so.
No.
All right. So as a new member to conservation, maybe you can.
I'm actually the longest standing conservation member on the current board.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes, it is.
How long is that?
Approximately 2 years.
Yeah, that's nice.
And is there any rationale for a new member not to be a full member?
The problem is that there are a lot of people, like with every committee, they bring a unique set of skills to that committee. Some are there, whether it be planning, with an axe to grind for a neighborhood, and they get put on a committee and they're able to uproot a particular project. But for our alternate, I believe that's why we have alternates, is because the learning curve is difficult. We do a lot of
You have associates.
walkthroughs. We have associates.
Yeah.
So having a lot of walkthroughs that we go do site visits, not everybody's able to go, and obviously we all can't go, or we're, in violation of the open meeting law. So if we've got multiple projects to go check on, we usually put a team together, or 2 or 3 people to go out and look at stuff. And obviously everybody's schedule's different, so it's helpful in some respects. In other respects, it can make for a long meeting and a long evening.
So if I become an associate on the committee, is there a time period, or do I have to take a test or anything to become a full member?
No, the associate member is a non-voting member, so we've got 5 voting members, and the associates are there just in the event of there's extra work that need to be assisted with, or they can lend a certain area of expertise that they can help out with.
They're appointed by.
They are appointed by the Board of Selectmen.
Oh, by the Board of Selectmen.
Yes.
Okay. I've worked on some state committees that have associate members for just what you're describing. Or if the bigger committee is working on a special project and you want an expert in a specific field, but that committee appoints them for an X amount of time. So,
That's what I was just going to ask. Is it an indefinite period of time?
It is an indefinite period of time.
So there's no turnover for the idea is that, all right, so you have your 5 main members, maybe you have 2 associates. But then as another member moves
Yeah,
off the
no,
wall,
that-
the next one can fill
That's
in,
another
and you're
piece
ready
of
to
it
hit.
too, right? Yeah, it's like building your,
Right.
Is there a limit on number of associates?
But if the full
I
committee,
believe we have two.
but if the full committee could not meet, that associate could not vote anyway.
They're still a non-voting member.
so they wouldn't make
I
a
just
quorum.
don't understand that.
Well, as long as we have a majority, so like our board, all we need is 3 people.
Yeah,
and we-
right. But they wouldn't help towards the quorum. the associates.
Correct. So that's obviously an area of some consideration. We can just make it a 7-member board. We can make it a 5-member board with 2 alternates, or we can, some combination of the two. You know, I can certainly tell you that as a planning board member, there is a very large learning curve as well, just in terms of understanding zoning law and subdivision law. So I'm not sure why we do it for conservation, but we don't do it for some other
Right.
commissions. So that is again on our list to try to figure out rationale behind.
And some would say we should have a liaison between your committee and the Conservation Commission, if we don't merge them together.
At least a file we can hand back and forth.
Exactly.
Again, looking back at Selectman Hagerty's note, he mentions term limits and how he generally does not support term limits for elected and appointed, but for Abington, feels that would be harmful just because, frankly, we sometimes struggle to get people to volunteer, and sometimes it's a lot of expertise. So, one question he raises is how we would define a full-time resident if we're talking about a ban from a board or committee. And that certainly is a good question, and why I'd like to hear back from the Board of Selectmen, their thoughts on it. 7 and 8 is about hiring and firing appointments, which is currently contained by the strong town manager. If he opposes any change to that as well. Again, I will follow up and ask for any other information from the Board of Selectmen. Otherwise, we'll just move forward with what we have and go from there. I still also would like to hear from the board and from Scott about how we can improve the budget process, because they all very clearly said they don't like it. And we're starting to get into it. So, how can we think about it? Any other notes, comments about these this correspondence?
No, I'll just point out that it was close to the exact opposite of the sentiments in the original memo. I just found that interesting.
Yes, so I'm guessing that if whoever brought it up in the original discussion was not.
Right. So it's good to see 2 sides of the story.
Any other thoughts or comments about those?
I think that's things we can discuss as we get closer to a document that we want to present.
Just, we're getting to the point where we need to start to finalize any input that's coming in so that we can transition to writing the change. Because I don't want to still be chasing information in January. January's 3 months away, pretty much, so. Kind of got to start.
Scary as that sounds.
Yeah, I mean, this is, we're starting to move up really quickly. So, the other thing I printed out for you is kind of a formatted version of how to, maybe we can consider some of these. I think we looked at some of these last time. I've made a couple updates on a couple of them. And then I just emailed Will's that he sent after his last meeting, so we can talk about those. Let's have that discussion. So this one is again about required annual training for board members. It was pointed out to me that under state law, you're not required to do open meeting law training every year. I believe in state ethics every year, I think it's every 2 years you have to do it. So I've changed it to basically to say whatever the requirement is by state law or state regulation, that's the frequency in which you have to do it. As well as what other training, you know, if your finance committee, the moderator might want you to do something. If you're a conservation, the conservation board of the town, or the board of selectmen may want you to do some professional development, or if you're a duly elected board, the board itself can decide, but we want our members to take some session every year. But That's the only change to that first one. Can we skip the open meeting law one, come back to that momentarily? Discuss it's a longer discussion. Absence of a town moderator, I adjusted this one. The initial language says first session of the town meeting following each annual town election. Well, currently our town meetings are before our town election. So this means that it would be, we'd have to wait almost several months for that to kick in. So I just still need the language that just said first session of the town meeting. We only usually have one session, but some towns actually have multiple. That's the one change there. And again, that just adds the ability for, adds the language about recusals, which currently doesn't exist. New one I put together was the conferring charter powers. This is basically it tries to thin out some of the twisted language that probably exists from the past 150 years. It's very archaic language, the existing one is. And we start by saying that it's subject to the limitations of the Constitution, statutes of the Commonwealth, and then we say it again a couple sentences later. So I'm thinking we can just simplify it, just strip out that first reference. This is probably more housekeeping than anything, and I'm sure lawyers will tell us there's a reason why I haven't done that first reference. But again, this is just trying to simplify the clutter. So again, we'll come back to the open meeting laws and minimum standard. This is my pet project. Now we have a full board. Don't know if we want to have any more further conversation, but again, the idea basically is, all right, so multiple member bodies are subject to open meeting law. What we want our boards to establish basically operating policies. Every committee, board, commission needs to have a document that says this is how we operate. This is what people can expect. This is what we focus on, the celebration statement, et cetera, et cetera. So this would say that the open meeting law is a minimum, should be considered a minimum standard, and that we want them, in the name of driving up civic engagement, to consider policies, procedures, and rules that go beyond the open meeting law. And for instance, I feel very strongly that people should be able to comment during public meetings. And I know that they don't have to under the open meeting law, unless it's a public hearing. But I think our policy as a town should be that if someone shows up to a meeting and they have a comment they'd like to say, that there should be an opportunity for them to get that comment. And again, the board can establish policies that say, you have 2 minutes, it can't be attacking somebody, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Make sure that's productive, that's on point, that it's on subject. But if we're going to have residents come out and give their time to do this, and they should do this, at least know how they can be a step over. They should at least know how they can contribute to the conversation. And part of this is board members being trained, especially chair people. If a comment goes over a line, if it's something that can't be discussed in public session, if it's irrelevant to the meeting and goes beyond the agenda, the chairperson has to have the ability to say, we hear you, thank you, we can't discuss this because A, B, and C. That's just part of the responsibility of being a chairperson, I would think. And then part of this also is encouraging committees to figure out ways to reach out to stakeholders. So using my committee as an example, we have to give notice to abutters for projects. That's great, but the people who may be impacted may not be directly abutting the property. So if you expanded it to like the reasonable neighborhood, that's probably a much better way of doing business and bringing more people into the fold. And so part of that is how do you want to do it? Do you want to do it through increased mailings? Do you want to do it through email? Do you want to do it through social media? The board and committee can figure it out, but they have to have that conversation. How do you want to reach out and get more people involved? Because, as you know, this is one of the big things we heard back in that survey. And of course, part of this is that, yes, there is going to be a budget cost associated with this. If the planning board needs another $400 a year to send out mailers so that we can increase civic engagement, well, I think that's a priority. That's it.
Is there currently a method of engagement outside of the meetings, so for people to offer public commentary? 'Cause I've just seen it, just attending other council meetings as a resident, you're able to sometimes submit comments ahead of time by email or whatever in case it's a...
And that would be part of this, is to say, all right, if someone has a comment and they like to follow up after a meeting, how do they do that?
Mm-hmm.
Who do they email? What format can be sent in?
But right now, is it more word of mouth, like, oh, I know Rick does?
Yeah, basically.
It's through some email.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that should be something, a document that should be sitting at the door when someone comes in, like, this is how you participate, these are the rules of the committee, or this is how we do business, so that people can know that. Or on each page of the town website, you go and click on conservation. This is the board policies and procedures. This is, they know exactly how the board operates and how they can contribute, and go from there.
I just want to make sure. So there isn't going to be a town policy and procedure. The charter is going to say, the board, you're responsible for the policy and procedure, but it has to include these things, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's good.
And I also leave open that, a committee can decide, what, we don't want to go any further than what is required by the meeting law. And that's fine.
Yep.
They need to vote that though. On the record, put their names to it,
Right.
and say we don't want to go any further. And then that's part of the record.
Right.
And that goes with having meetings broadcast too, recorded, which is part of this. A committee can decide we don't want our meetings recorded, but they need to take a vote to say that as part of it. Because right now, we need to figure out how to work to make sure that that's possible and feasible. But, I'm uncomfortable with committees just deciding to have meetings in places where we can't record.
And at times that are not convenient to the public, like at 11:30 or 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon,
Yeah.
which I've seen some do.
So, again, I'm not looking to make uniform decisions, or I wouldn't want to make uniform decisions because every committee is different, every meeting's different. But they need to take these steps and say, yes, we're going to, no, we're not going to. And then that's part of the record. So don't need to give approval to this tonight. Right? This is how I do it.
I think that's something, though, that's very easy. And one of the things that we had discussed that is very common for meetings is, an Atkins or Robert's Rule of Order on how to conduct a meeting. And if the chairperson is familiar with those rules, it's very easy when you're having public comment as opposed to just having an outburst from the audience.
Yes.
Which typically, if it's an outburst because there is no comment section, it turns aggressive and confrontational when it may not even necessarily be a confrontational comment. Just let's get it on the record, step up, say your name, have your voice heard. That's what everybody says, have your voice heard, make your vote count, whatever mantra you want to put on it, but getting engaged and being involved is having some rules to say, we welcome you in, just follow these rules.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and it also hits on, the topics of transparency and accountability, right? We're putting the rules out there for how you can interact with the committees, but it's also pushing the committees to be more proactive so people won't have to question what they're doing as much too.
Yeah. And committees can't say, well, we don't have a policy on this. Well,
right.
They need to have one. This is part of their responsibility.
And let's face it, going forward, if there's ground rules and a template set up, it'll make it very easy for the committees going forward to say, this is what we're using, we'll put our committee name on it and adopt it.
Yeah.
Getting into the question, who enforces that?
Well, there's a question of who enforces anything in the charter.
Right.
Because that's actually one of the questions I was going to bring up later is I realize that there is no enforcement measure in any of this.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have a situation when there's a clear violation of the town charter, what happens to that, as there is
is that a committee? Do we need to have a committee just to deal with those situations?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know the answer.
Wouldn't the select people have the authority to remedy that situation by, if individuals are responsible to take them off the committee?
In theory, you would think yes.
Selectman can't remove a planning board member. But, you know, if the planning board isn't allowing public comment in contrast to the town charter, could citizens go to court and get a court order requiring them to? I assume that that's a remedy, but I don't know.
Be an easier remedy than that, though.
Should be. But, yeah, and that's something I realized, there's no, what do you do? So.
That's difficult, right? Like, for a lot of organizations like this. Because there's a lot of boards, I'm sure, that have in their bylaws some kind of archaic language, like if you miss 3 consecutive meetings, you can't be on the board anymore, but no one's ever enforces those things. So, yeah, I mean, maybe we put language in this as a select board is empowered with enforcing violations of the charter, but then what does that look like, right?
From the Board of Selectmen side, is that something is voted by the public? Are they going to want to take charge and step up? Because that's never a positive. You know, if you have to render a ruling.
Right. Yeah.
But the vast majority of boards are directly voted by them, so.
Right.
I did email around just a moment ago Will's suggested changes. And we'll certainly have time to review it again, but I don't know if you want to just kind of walk us through some of what you're thinking.
Yeah, real quickly. 3 of the things I looked at. One was the budget process, which is section 6.5 of the charter right now. And you know, I didn't make massive changes, but you know, one of the suggestions is right now it has to be in a written form, just simplifying that to in the form which the town manager deems desirable. So like we can send things out digitally now, it's just updating that. A lot of like language suggestions, but under 6.3, which is I'm going backwards, the budget message, adding language along the lines of the budget message, which is required in the charter, and it's questionable whether or not that is something that happens or what does it look like now, but the message shall be presented in an open public meeting at least 30 days prior to annual town meeting. It shall be recorded and made available to residents. And part 2, the written form of the budget message shall be made available on the town website and in print when appropriate from the town clerk. So not only, we want it to be more than just a message from the town manager to the select board or to the finance committee. We want it to be a specific presentation about the budget and for there to be some kind of documentation, whether it's a slideshow or whatever form is appropriate. I'm just trying to make it a more open process. There's a section just on the budget, which is 6.4, and that whole section might be redundant because it's covered in like 6.3 and 6.5, so we might want to look at it. We don't even need that section. So that's the budget section. The second one I looked at was town manager qualifications. And this was something that we got some feedback on, I think. And it was looking to eliminate the current language, which says something about a person especially fitted by education, which shall consist of at least this, that, and the other thing. To be the town manager shall be a person especially fitted by education, his or her professional experience, a minimum of a bachelor's degree is preferred for education in at least 3 years full-time service in a managerial capacity. It lowers the qualifications from what is currently there, and that was the feedback that we had people talking to us about. I know anecdotally in Massachusetts right now, over the last couple of months, there have been a number of openings of town managers and town administrators, and it's getting harder to find qualified people based on the more severe qualifications. So this would kind of lower it. It wouldn't eliminate qualifications. It would just make them easier for that search committee to interpret, I guess, is the language I would say about that. And then finally, I looked at the vacancy in office, and part of that is just about how you communicate and advertise it, because it's not really spelled out in the current, section 314. It's just trying to use more digital website things. The second part of that vacancy we'll have a longer discussion on probably is the whole concept of if there's a 9-member board with a vacancy and they put forth a person they think that should be the replacement and they go to a joint meeting with the select board, well then it's a vote of 9 against 5. And who runs that meeting? Because it's a joint meeting, so is the chair of the select board the chair of that meeting, or is the chair of the 9-member board? So the language is basically, it says the chair of the selectmen shall convene and chair the meeting, because we have to say who it's going to be. And I'm just suggesting that for now. And the appointment would be based on a majority vote of all the members there, but it has to be also a majority vote of each individual board. So it's not just a stacked up number of, what's 9, 14 or 13 out of 14. It has to be at least 3 out of 5 and 5 out of 9 to do it. So
I like that.
So that's that kind of seems a little bit more fair. So
One other component of that could be that the boards alternate who nominates the person for the discussion.
Right.
But,
yeah.
the first one being the board, the nomination comes from the board who needs the member.
Yeah.
So if it's, the health board, it's the health board who makes that first nomination.
Right.
Maybe it goes up, maybe it goes down, then it's the board of selectmen's turn, and it goes back and forth until, that way it's not just whoever shouts the loudest.
Yes.
What a 4/5 vote.
But then both boards have to,
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are the 3 that I looked at since last we met.
So I think we just also need to take a closer look at the cadence of how the whole thing moves forward. That had some confusion, I think, in terms of how it works, and then
The timing.
and then also what happens if board of selectmen decide we don't have enough qualified people. So let's say there's one person, and that person's unqualified. Do they have to do another whole 14 and 30 days thing, or can it just be we're going to extend it by a week? Then if we extend it, does the person who's already applied have to reapply, or can those names be carried forward? And these are legitimate issues that popped up last year with conservation, is how that process works in Board of Health too. Is those little details that just didn't have an answer to. But it's a good start. My note, really note for the budget one is I feel like the public presentation should happen at the start of the Finance Committee review process. So generally, I think the town manager gives the Finance Committee his budget end of December, early January, somewhere in that time frame. So it should be maybe either coinciding with that, the town manager shall give his report, and it shall include these features. It should include, revenue trends and spending trends and new positions and whatever the demands are. We would have to go that deep. But because otherwise, if it's a month before a town meeting, they're still pretty elbows deep in, I think, some of the hearings.
Mm-hmm.
So we better have it beforehand.
Still working on it right at the town meeting.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it can be, First Monday in January, you know, town manager knows he's got to give the budget presentation. You know, you could do it that way too.
Yeah.
First selectmen's meeting in January. Anchor it that way. My thought.
I'm trying to remember, because this language is, it's 30 days before when you have to have it to FinCom, and then, yeah, how much time does that leave FinCom to?
Yeah, so it's nothing saying that FinCom can't start the review before.
Right.
If FinCom gets it January 1st, they can have a meeting January 2nd.
Right.
Maybe selectmen don't meet until the 10th.
Yeah.
But at that first meeting, maybe is when you say, you kind of peg it in there. And then for the town manager, I mean, this obviously came up with Scott. I think we may want more than 3 years, and this is nitpicking.
Yeah.
I think, only because I think it's preferred that they have some sort of professional degree, but realizing that there are going to be situations where someone who's had 20 years of experience is just as qualified. 3 to me is just, it's kind of a little bit.
Yeah, I wanted to put some language down,
that's fine.
but to your point, the previous language said, you know, which shall consist of at least a degree and shall include at least 5 years. I put in the word preferred, which if we could go back to 5 with preferred, and that gives the search committee the leeway to say 4 is, you know, within the range. So.
And I'm sure this is something that's gone back and forth where, you know, 20 years ago it was
Right.
the other way.
Right.
It swung one way.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, with the current situation of the work climate, that could get even more difficult.
Yes.
You know,
Right.
we've had the benefit of people coming from bigger locations, and I'm sure there are other towns that are smaller and bigger than us that have had people come from a city setting
Right.
coming down to the town that certainly have qualifications to handle what's going on.
Yeah. There's a lot of good avenues to being a good public administrator that doesn't require
Yeah.
to start with a degree. You know, if there was a fire chief, for instance, who is, I'm not saying fires don't have degrees, but, you know, there might be a situation where a firefighter doesn't have a bachelor's degree, but turns out they're a really good chief. They're moving up, and this might be their retirement or something. Or
It's certainly very heavy in the budget process and within the department, and certainly I would say we're as familiar, if not more familiar than most of the town employees as far as what goes on in the FinCom and the building of the master plan.
All right. So I guess what I'd like to do is just assign out the rest of them with a goal of, at our next meeting, having documents that we can then look at and react to and do this process with, because this is really kind of getting into the meat of it here. So, all right, form of government. We're going to leave this one open for now, only because that's our next conversation. So we don't need anything for that. I made a note about appointment 10 days versus 20 days, but I don't remember what it's about. Do you think there?
Yeah, I think there's one point in the charter that says that the select board will post an opening for 10 days, and then another part it says they'll post an opening for 20 days.
Okay.
I think it's something to do with that. I'd have to dig.
I'll take a look at that. Annual training, I've done. Opening is minimum, I've done. Resident outreach. Police chief civil service and police chief fire contracts. Pete, can I give that to you?
Sure.
I actually having served on the search committee, I think that probably fits in your resume.
Oh, yeah.
So that's just putting together some language that we can take a look at. There's one here, Will, I have your name next to, about 1.7, definition review, qualified officer, non-bidding of delay.
1.7?
Yeah,
All right.
I'll leave it up to you.
What is it? What's the topic again?
Definition review.
Oh, yeah, okay. Absolutely. I think that's the,
I'm going to also require, or not require, ask John Stone and the Sewer Commission to give some feedback about their status. So I'm going to skip over signing out right now, but that's something we need to hear about. I don't think we can, water works does not fall under the charter. They're a whole separate thing, so.
That is correct.
The next one is changing all the references of selectmen to select board, and that's just going to be a big haul, so I'm going to skip over that one right now. Library director appointment, that discussion we had. Will, you?
yeah, I'll do that.
You know what, think about it.
Yeah, we have some comments from them, so.
Rich, can I give you planning board terms? And this is basically looking at the language for planning board, 5 members of 5 years. I don't know if we want to particularly change it, but if you have a thought on it, put something down, just take a look at it and react to it. And if you don't, then it's fine.
Will do.
You do that one, library personnel. Will 4.2b, library personnel.
Yeah.
Does it cover a follow-up? No.
I'll just library, no. Okay. Oh, yeah, I remember that. I mean, in my other life, I'm a librarian.
That's helpful to know.
Pete, can I give you 7.9, which is board minute approvals and board minute access? That comes back to what we heard from library board as well, is that a 60-day limit might not be enough. Maybe it should be expanded to 75 days. And also clarify where those minutes are kept, who posts them, who maintains them, etc.
Call the town website.
Small box in the middle.
It's really hard too. But I can do it.
Rich, we had talked about looking at some of the town manager activities. Like, can they be involved in something outside of being a town manager? Can they be from the finance committee of their hometown? Could you look at that and make a note if there's something in particular that would work?
Rick, what was that one?
This is the one about, says currently the town manager shall devote full time to the duties of the office and shall not hold any other elective or appointed town office. Nor shall the town manager engage in any other business unless such action shall be approved in advance in writing by the Board of Selectmen. Maybe that's the appropriate language. Maybe we want to loosen it so that if it's unrelated to his duties, if he wants to go serve on Park and Rec in the hometown, does it really matter? Do they really need written approval to go serve on the Park and Rec committee 6 towns away? I don't know. Presentation, financial. So, Will, I have you down for 4.4 and 6.2. 4.2 is financial numbers. I think it's just looking at the language and seeing if that makes sense still.
Yep.
So that's. Rich, I have one down here. Actually, this one's from Amanda. So, 7.5. I think there's some language about how days are calculated.
Okay.
I think we need to clarify whether it's business days or working days.
Give me a tough one.
The charter's in the,
Oh, you forwarded me a bunch of.
okay, but it is on the website now.
Thank you. To read that, do my ethics test.
Rick, I was doing 4.2, the power section.
It's okay, we've done my hours.
Yep. We have 7.6. Again, I need to print out copies of this. I can look at them on this copy of the charter. Well, there's something to be said about holding something made of paper.
Oh.
Instead.
I have a copy of it, well, it doesn't have your notes on it. Charter if you need it.
What the dickens is this? Words importing the singular number may extend and be applied to several persons or things. Words importing the plural number may include the singular. And words importing the masculine gender shall include the feminine gender. Wow.
This is the loophole.
I kind of understand, but just so, I don't know what to do with that. I feel like that's the kind of left over from 1840 or something.
Sounds like it would not do the board,
Yeah.
selectmen to the select board.
7, 9, I'm just going to go that quick. So I have it down 7, 9, but I think we'll probably consider these. Well, calling meetings. All right, Amanda, there's, we have a note down here about board member onboarding. This might be a good one. So there isn't, I can't refer you to a certain passage because it doesn't exist. This is a completely new language. More the idea of if someone joins a board, what should they be presented in terms of information? What would make sense? Is what you want. Ability to restructure committees during the middle of the year. I'll do that one.
What's that one?
This is, there was some confusion about whether a committee can elect a new chairperson in the middle of the year. There's nothing in there that says you can't, but it's nothing in there that says you can. So some committees have interpreted it to say you can do it. The school committee was told, no, they can't, because it's not expressly permitted.
Yeah.
Was told by whom?
I guess they're attorneys. So,
So they were told they can't because it's not permitted.
right.
Chair appointment took up a whole day of town meeting in Milton this year, and it wasn't on the agenda for town meeting. It was one of those times when we went sideways.
Isn't that a voted position? The school committee chair resigns. And you have an opening, right?
Yeah, this was about.
No, I understand, but I'm just,
Yeah, no,
There has been situations where a board has restructured in the middle of the year.
but if the chair resigns,
You need to.
Yeah.
then you have to fill it, right?
But by restructuring it, is it referring to vacancies or is it?
No, it's also referring to if they decide that
Any-
the chairperson is
Okay.
not the chairperson anymore.
Oh,
Okay, so it's like stopping the rules. All right.
Hmm.
Yes.
Look at that on both sides.
Right.
You know, you
Yeah,
have
I
a
mean-
majority board that says we don't like you, and it becomes a popularity contest. Not getting what we want,
Right.
you know,
It's a tough one.
especially if it's an elected position.
Yeah,
Are there guidelines?
Because that means
for
the
who-
townspeople put that person in position.
right.
Yeah, there are,
not as chairman, no.
there are guidelines to recall. Yeah, you're not kicking them off the board. This is just saying, we'll hold a vote and you're no longer chair.
Yeah, so this is off topic, so I'll be brief, but the thing that was happening in Milton was the past precedent for, 150 years was the most senior person would assume the chair of whatever the planning committee it was in this case, right? But upon the election, this side got the numbers over that side, and they just appointed a freshman person to it instead of the most senior person, just based on politics. So they want that in the bylaws now too, so, yeah. Tangent. Yeah.
I mean, a related one that's on our list as well is term limits, both in terms of how long someone serves on a board and how long someone serves as chairperson of that board. Because there were some that argue that having someone serve 10 years straight as a chair of a committee is probably not the best thing, or 20 years, or 30 years.
Could be both mean and empowering.
Yes. There's benefits and drawbacks, but something to consider. So anyway, yeah, this is a town meeting, just going through the list. A post we got on it during town meeting was increased transparency, check and balances on members. I don't have any more than that, so I don't know where they can sign it. I think it's just more just kind of a guidepost. More public presentations. How about you flip through and just see if there's places where you think it would help to have it specified more about public presentations or making presentations available or whatever.
Assuming people come to.
Yeah.
Lead versus water.
Right.
Well, and I think that's been across the board as we've sat here from the beginning, is increasing transparency with the hopes of increasing participation.
Right.
And ultimately, you can open up those lanes. People need to follow the path. If they don't want to, there's nothing we can do about it. But certainly having access to have the information and be educated, because you can see the difference between if there's a hot contested item at a town meeting, the people are typically going to those meetings and they're educated versus the meetings that there's really not much going on and people aren't there. And then there could potentially be a million questions being asked because people just simply weren't paying attention at some of these meetings, or by attending, of course, is what I mean, but some things are definitely more hot button topics.
One other suggestion we received during the town meeting post was ban on town employees running for office. I'll put together some language on that to reflect that. Again, I see pros and cons either way. So, fine.
Is that legal?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just
So
asking.
we're saying elected office.
I think Braintree was one town that you can, still can, if you're a town employee, you can't run for town office. Note here was how to improve town meeting. I have Pete, I have your name next to this. What was it?
I have a simple idea on that.
You do?
Get rid of it. I think it's the most archaic. I still think we need a council strong manager.
Okay.
And that way the budget issues would come out, the select people would understand the whole budget and people could come to the meetings. But, you know, when you have to beg people to come to town meeting and the budget, takes 5 minutes to go through? $50 million, whatever it was, nobody asked any questions. We didn't even see the school budget, just one line.
No sense. For
Is
the,
that covered under state law, though?
The school budget being on one line is state law.
But I think it's still presented to us as, here's what's in it. They present it as deeper, but
They
you'll-
didn't. They don't.
They
Right,
did.
They don't have to break down their budget for the town meeting.
They did last year.
It's a lot of, yeah, I mean, I have my own personal feelings of how the budget's presented to us as grown-ups. And that's certainly one of them. Apparently, we're not allowed to see where the revenues are coming from when you look at this town budget. I have a problem with that. So,
it's not public record.
it is, but you then have to specifically request, kind of see what all the revenues are, as opposed to when you get your town budget packet.
Right.
There should be at least something that says that this is where the money is coming from to pay all of these bills.
And at this point in the budget process, when it's being presented, there's not like room for input. It's not asking for input or
So, like,
real
today?
commentary.
Like today,
Yeah,
like, no, there's no.
there's no, there's no
Yeah,
action
no.
really.
Town manager's kind of pulling together budgets and right now, different department heads and he's deciding to put them into a document and then you're going to hear us say, well, we have a $2.3 million deficit already. Because everyone just puts in whatever they request and they start from there. And then,
Right, and they also start working with a deficit because they don't know what the free cash monies are going to be because they're not certified by the state until November or something. So,
Yeah,
Anyway.
nightmare.
but you know where your levy limit's going to be.
Right.
You have an idea what your excise taxes are going to be and your local revenue taxes and everything else. I mean, you know what they're going to be already.
yeah,
You might not know what your new growth number is.
right, that's it. But you have an idea. You should get an idea.
But again, that's one of my concerns is it's not presented to you. You have no idea what's being funded, what.
Nobody asked either.
Yeah.
Because the majority of the people may not understand it.
I understand that, but it just, see page 1. Everybody okay? See page 2? That's how it goes?
I will also say, however, having 6 nights of town meeting is probably not the best way of doing it either.
It is not.
I think we've been through those already, yes.
It is
We
not.
haven't in a while,
Oh.
but,
I do it every year.
yeah.
It's not great.
Is it representative or is it,
It's
is it open?
representative town meeting in Milton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is their time to shine.
Oh, it is. And they love it.
Copy this, we'll go.
Rich, could you work on some language about appointing the emergency management director, since you seem to understand that one? Board of Selectmen had suggested a stipend for the Board of Selectmen. Pete, could you just put together some general language about that? The numbers they had suggested was 2,500 for members and 3,000 for the chair. Again, just language that we can react to. I know you're reacting right now, probably, but.
Select person, right?
Yeah. Rich, could you work on something about committee alternates and associates? Pete, could you look at term limits? Again, I'm not asking you to endorse it, I'm asking just to give something we can react to.
He's already reacting, he's throwing stuff at you.
Thank you.
I'm going to give you more homework.
Yeah.
Could you look at a couple other towns and see what they say about enforcing violations of the charter? So maybe like Brookline, Woburn, I don't know, some other towns that, or in a city or a town. I think it's a town. But yeah, other towns to see if they have ways of enforcing violations.
Around 20,000 population.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, there are numerous numbers that are floating around for Abington.
50,000 is what I saw.
I found out that the state agencies can ask UMass Boston for the population. They don't go by the federal numbers necessarily. Because for the COVID, it was 18,000. And then for others, the official one is 16 something.
Yeah.
So that doesn't make any sense either. There should be one number for everything, but anyway. Get off my horse.
Who needs another one? Anybody? I can't have Rich do the next two.
What are they? Are they together?
Yeah, Board of Selectmen approval of department heads and major hires and approval of police and fire hires. Being a repeat or Bill.
I thought I had the police and fire chief, right?
That was police and fire chief. This is about
Other.
when the town manager appoints a new fire chief.
Is the fire chief appointed? I thought they were selected.
They're appointed by the town manager.
This is a review of police and fire employees, not the chief.
It's both. It would be basically that Board of Selectmen essentially hires the chiefs. That was the suggestion from the Board of Selectmen. I don't think it has majority support on the Board of Selectmen, but it was on the list that we were given to look into.
If you want to do that one, I'll do the one about the department head hires. That was the other one?
Yeah.
I always thought that the fire chief was picked by civil
Thank you.
service. Isn't the fire chief civil service?
Both chiefs, actually, the police chief is just
No, he's
civil
not.
service.
Yeah.
The fire chief is civil service.
Yeah, so the fire chief's already spoken for.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah.
I was just
And by charter, he's a strong chief, so really it's kind of,
Yeah. So the town has no,
Right, but currently the language in the charter is that the town manager makes the final call on who the new chief is, because there could be multiple candidates. It's not just whoever's hired.
correct.
It could be multiple candidates.
It can be multiple candidates in that particular situation. If you've got 3 people that pass the civil service test, the town will elect to
Yeah.
interview all 3, and then from there they take the board and the town manager would make a decision. There is recourse because typically it goes to the highest score.
Traditionally, the deputy chief in Rockland could apply to be the chief in Abington, right? It doesn't have to be the Abington
Correct.
person.
Correct. You could have an outside chief take the test
Yeah.
and request to be part of the interview process.
But the police chief is not civil service at all.
Correct.
Which there are pros and cons to both sides of it.
Rick, I have to get running.
Yep, I'm going to end it anyway. So very quickly, our next meeting is scheduled for October 13th. At this time, Ted Langell from the Weymouth Mayor's Office will be here to talk about what he sees as some of the pros and cons about having a town switch to a mayor. He's been involved in 2 of them, Mayor and Braintree and Weymouth. He's very frank and honest, and I think it'll be very helpful. And so I'm going to try to be promoting this meeting in the coming weeks so that we get more than what's here tonight.
Are we going to have, do we know of any, can we think about getting somebody from Bridgewater or the council?
Sure. I will do that too. Yep.
What day is it again? I just want to-
13%.
And 6 o'clock?
Yep, 6 o'clock. So what you might see over the next couple of weeks is some media coverage. I've already talked to WATD. They are interested in doing some coverage of the fact that Abington is at least even considering this. So don't freak out that this is being, might get out there. Like, it's not going to be a secret. We want people to come and hear and discuss it. And we'll promote it at the senior center where there seems to be particular interest in it. But, this is part of the outreach for this type of conversation. So, there's going to be some conversations about, are we really going to have a mayor? What's this? What a dumb idea. Or, like, yes, we absolutely need it. That whole conversation may start. So, the pulse of the board is we are not supporting or opposing anything at this point, but based on the results of the survey, we feel like we have to do our due diligence and at least have some brief conversations about whether this makes sense.
Absolutely.
But this is not us taking a stand on it either way. Or we can even say that we generally don't think this is a good idea, but we're open-minded and going to have a conversation. Yep.
Judging by the survey, it seems to see what the people want, and when we make our presentation,
Yeah.
we'll let them decide.
I mean, it was 34%, I think. That's, can't ignore it. So, that's our next meeting, and we'll meet up. When that stuff starts to come up, I encourage you to share it with your networks and see if we can get, a healthy turnout. We obviously won't have that discussion in this room. We'll try to get a different, bigger room so that we can have a little bit more space. All right. I will entertain a meeting.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Any conversation, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.